I'm Tinabeth Pena. Contrary to popular belief, Asian Americans are not your stereotypical model minority. In fact, their incarceration rates are on the rise. And just like any other inmate that gets paroled, their transition into society can be an uphill battle, maybe more so.
If you don't know who I am by now, then it's about that time you ask somebody about me.
When I was in prison, I was like, well, what am I gonna do with myself? Am I gonna just like sit here and play games, and just waste my time doing that? Or am I going to, use this time to start setting up for my release? Am I gonna read books? Am I gonna just educate myself and just do whatever I can do to come out a different person?
China Mac knows the prison system well. He spent 10 years behind bars for attempted murder and did time before that for gang-related crimes.
If I would have never went to prison, I don't think it would be to this level. I don't know what would have happened, But at the same time, I also went through a lot in prison. I caused a lot of people heartaches and a lot of people, pain and suffering. I caused myself a lot of pain and suffering. And, whatever happens in prison, when you get in trouble, right, you see who's there. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you're dying, right? It's kind of like but you're not dead. You're not physically dead, but you're away. You're away, and then you get to see what's really important.
What's the Asian population like in prison?
When I was in Sing Sing, there was maybe 7, 8 of us, which was a lot for me. But then the prison might be so big, so we might not be together. Right. I might be here, and that person might be all the way over there.
Do you think prison worked for you?
I think so. I mean, it worked for me because I don't never want to go back to prison. And I worked on not going back to prison.
In the 2 years he's been on parole, China Mac has become an established hip-hop artist. And according to him, he put together a combination of personal savings and private investors, bought a recording studio, and created a record label, an outcome that is far from ordinary for former felons. Unfortunately, a few months after this interview, China Mac violated his parole and was back in jail.
Punitive practices, particularly the way the criminal justice system is set up, has to address long-term issues, right? And not just we're going to jail you and you get released and you're supposed to be changed and all that stuff. When folks come out, there's no home to go to. There are very few grassroots organizations in API community in general. Yeah, a lot of people fall right back into the system.
According to the AAPI Beyond Bars Committee, over 70% of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are arrested for new crimes within 3 years of being out of prison. Those recidivism rates are based on the estimated 9% of AAPIs in state and federal prisons. Although these numbers are low compared to other ethnicities, they are only approximations, since Asians are officially categorized as others throughout much of the U.S. prison system.
In mass incarceration or the criminal justice system, our numbers are lumped, right? So, for example, we're categorized as others, not as Asian, or even disaggregate even further, Cambodian, Vietnamese, Hmong, Laos, Chinese, and all that stuff. So what happens is our experience is lost in that data because the data doesn't show that we have increased. I think since 1997, particularly API juvenile arrest or incarceration has increased over 200%. So what we're looking at is the demystifying of the model minority myth.
California-based artist Jennifer Moon debunked the myth when she was given an 18-month prison sentence in 2008 for attempted robbery.
Guards and inmates would come up, would say, what are you in prison for? You don't look like you should be here. Or I know I'm not supposed to ask this, but what are you here for? And then I would, say attempted robbery, and people would be very shocked.
But the model minority myth wasn't the only stereotype Moon encountered behind bars.
A lot of people would call me Chinese lady. They'd be like, hey, Chinese lady. And I'd be like, well, I'm not Chinese. Mm-hmm. Or they would say things like, oh, you look like Yoko Ono. So there is certainly, maybe a lack of exposure to Asian culture in prison. And so I played up this kind of revolutionary identity, which probably changed people's perceptions of what an Asian woman is or supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer's revolutionary stance is also seen in her artwork.
Possibly me being an Asian woman and having gone to prison, it becomes sort of like a novelty. And it also makes an interesting narrative. So then I was able to use that in my work.
I am reacting to my feelings of not being enough, which then drive me to continually prove my worth and what I believe is right.
Would you say you're grateful for that experience?
I am grateful for it, yes. For me to learn a certain love of self and others, and also understanding a freedom that's not defined by confinement, like physical confinement, was a huge gift.
As the Asian American population continues to grow, so has the total number of Asian Americans living in poverty. According to the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, 12.6% of Asian Americans live below the poverty line, and some of those lower income individuals find themselves behind bars.
So my parents, they were immigrants from China and Malaysia. They came to America, and we were extremely poor growing up. I just ended up with the wrong crowd and ended up joining a gang. We started committing some crimes, and that's eventually what led me to getting a 12-year sentence.
Jason served time in Texas for aggravated robbery.
For you or for your mom, was there any shame involved?
In Chinese culture, we have something that's called mianzi, right? And that's extremely important. What other people like see you or you're standing in the community. When I was incarcerated, my father, he disowned me. A lot of people from church decided to distance themselves from us. My mom didn't feel like she could go to church anymore. And so coming out, I felt that I was covered in this, I guess, veil of shame, that everybody was going to look down on me, and that there was, like, I would always be known for the worst thing that I'd ever done, and that there was no way to break that.
The stigma of being an ex-con can be difficult to overcome, but uniquely more so for Asian Americans. Fortunately, Jason broke through that and created a successful and unique gift delivery company. But he hasn't forgotten his prison roots.
I chose to make something different out of my situation. I didn't choose to accept that. I chose to spot opportunity and take advantage of opportunities. And so my whole purpose now, I feel, is to give back and serve others. Because when I was at my lowest point, it was the kindness of others that helped build me as a person, right? And so over the past 8 years, I go back to prisons and I really try to help motivate these kids to do something once they've gotten out.
From the stigmas experienced by former inmates and their families, to the number of Asian Americans behind bars and the stereotypes they encounter while locked up, the model minority myth for Asian Americans is just that, a myth.
I guess that idea of honor and shame from like the old generation perspective is starting to be lost in the new generation. Going back to prisons, it's starting to really surprise me how many more Asians I'm starting to see when I go back to facilities. Instead, it's the mindset's starting to definitely shift.
According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the total number of people locked up in the U.S. is currently over 2 million. Part of that number includes people facing immigration and deportation, many of them Southeast Asian Americans. For Asian American Life, I'm Tinabeth Pena.